In 1921, a woman published a book so small you could lose it in a coat pocket. No dramatic cover, no bold promises, just a quiet, slim little volume that barely made a ripple when it came out. And yet, decades later, it would get quoted in one of the most watched films ever made about the human capacity to create what it wants. Most people who've heard of Geneviève Behrend know the outline of her story. A woman, early 1900s, decides she wants to study with the most sought-after teacher of mental philosophy in the world. He's in England, she's in America. She has no money for the journey, no obvious way to fund it, and no connection to the man whatsoever. And then, through a method she later documented in precise detail, she attracted exactly the amount she needed within a matter of weeks. People tell that story all the time. What they almost never explain is the mechanism underneath it. Not the affirmations, not the visualization ritual, the posture. The specific internal posture that made the whole thing work and that makes it fail for almost everyone who tries a surface-level version of it today. So let's do this properly. Before I say another word, make a fist. Right now, as tight as you can. Hold it. Feel your forearm tighten. Feel your knuckles whiten a little. Feel the effort it actually takes to hold a closed hand. Now imagine someone trying to place a coin in your palm. There's nowhere for it to land. Your hand is too occupied holding nothing to receive something. That image of a closed fist versus an open hand is the invisible method. Not a code, not a ritual, a posture, and almost every modern manifestation video skips right past it because it's quieter and less dramatic than the techniques they're trying to sell you. I'm Marcus Cole. This is Infinite Possibilities, and today I want to walk you through what that posture actually is, why wanting something badly can quietly work against you, and what the open hand feels like from the inside, not as a concept, but as a lived, daily practice. Here's the thing that surprises people when I first say it. Wanting something badly should feel like it pulls things toward you. That's the whole promise. Feel it deeply enough, believe it strongly enough, and what you want starts moving in your direction. But here's what actually happens in your body when you want something badly. Your jaw sets. Your shoulders lift toward your ears without you noticing. You check your phone for the message that hasn't come yet, and then check it again 4 minutes later, as if somehow the result will be different. You lie awake at 2 a.m., running scenarios you can't control. You rehearse disappointment before disappointment has even decided to show up. That isn't desire pulling something toward you. That's your nervous system settling into the exact same posture it uses for threat. And here's the thing about threat response. It doesn't distinguish between a tiger and a bank balance. Tight chest, narrowed attention, constant low-level scanning for what's wrong, your body produces the same signature for both. Your physiology doesn't read intensity as hope. It reads intensity as something is currently in danger, stay alert. Think about someone waiting on medical results. Real situation, deeply uncomfortable. They know that checking the patient portal 15 times won't change what the result says, and they check it 15 times anyway, because the act of checking feels like doing something. Every check reconfirms, still don't know, still don't have this resolved, still in the waiting room of my own life. Now scale that down to money, to a business result, to a relationship, to an opportunity. The mechanism is the same. The checking is the same. The grip is the same. Let's go deeper than feelings for a moment, because I don't want to leave you with stop being anxious, which is the least useful advice a person can receive. Here's the actual mechanism, the reason the grip costs you something concrete. You've done this with parking. Everyone has. You're circling the block, completely certain there's nothing, eyes locked on the far end of the street where you know it's going to be full, and you pass 2 empty spots because your attention was somewhere else entirely. The grip doesn't just feel bad, it edits your perception in real time. It makes you functionally less capable of seeing what's actually available. Now apply that to money, to opportunity, to the thing you've been wanting for a long time. How many times have you been so locked into this isn't working that you didn't register the thing that was quietly, unremarkably beginning to work right there, in ordinary daylight, if you'd been looking with an open hand instead of a clenched one? This is what Behrend's teacher was pointing to, in his more formal philosophical language, when he drew the distinction between what he called desperate craving and calm assumption. Strip the era-specific language away and the distinction is simple. One posture closes the hand, one leaves it open. There's a short exercise on manifesttheinfinite.com built specifically around catching the moment your hand closes throughout an ordinary day, around ordinary things, before it becomes the unconscious default. Worth spending a few minutes with if what I'm describing feels familiar. Let's keep going. Here's what I think gets missed when people tell Behrend's story, and it matters, because it changes what the method actually is. Most versions focus on the outcome. She needed money. She visualized it. It came. $20,000, 6 weeks, documented result. People love that part. It's dramatic. It's quotable. What they skip is the specific quality of attention she describes applying to those visualization sessions. The word she keeps returning to isn't intensity. It isn't passion. It isn't even belief in the way people usually mean it. The word is naturalness. She describes treating the money as a perfectly natural outcome, not a miracle she was begging for, not a long shot she was white-knuckling, something that was simply, quietly going to happen because she had understood a principle well enough that the outcome felt like a logical consequence rather than a desperate wish. That's an open hand. That's the entire difference. She wasn't sitting in her room twice a day gripping the idea of $20,000. She was sitting with it the way you sit with a plan you trust. Attentive, calm, specific, but not bracing, not strangling the outcome into existence through sheer force of wanting. And here's the thing I want you to hold on to. That quality of attention, naturalness, calm specificity, the felt sense of course this is coming, is not a personality trait. It's not something some people have and others don't. It's a practice, a skill, something that gets built in small, quiet moments, not performed once in a dramatic leap of faith. The grip is what you practice by default, without realizing it, every time you refresh the page or replay the worry at 2 a.m. The open hand is what you practice on purpose, slowly, until it starts to become the new default instead. Now I know where some of you are in this conversation. Fine. Open hand, let go. But what does that actually feel like when you're in the middle of wanting something that hasn't come yet? That's the right question. And I want to answer it honestly, because most manifestation content waves at this point and says something like, trust the process, which tells you nothing about the internal experience of actually doing that. The open hand doesn't feel like certainty. I want to be clear about that. It doesn't feel like I know this is coming, so I'm at peace. That's too close to forced positivity, which is just another form of bracing, pressing a feeling over the top of another feeling, and hoping the first one doesn't leak through. It feels closer to this. You know how it feels to sit with a really good book one you're genuinely absorbed in, and you've got maybe 40 pages left, and they're good pages, and you're not anxious about how it ends. You're just there, turning pages. That's not indifference. You care about the story. You care how it resolves. But you're not white-knuckling the last chapter. That's an open hand. Or think of someone who's genuinely skilled at what they do. A surgeon, a carpenter, a musician mid-performance. They care about the outcome, deeply. But they're not performing anxiety about it while they work, because the anxiety would interfere with the very thing producing the outcome. Their attention is full and clear and unclenched. They're present in the doing, not bracing against the not yet having. My own experience of this, and I'll be straight with you, is that the open hand isn't a permanent state I walk around in. It's a moment-to-moment choice. And I notice the grip returning, regularly, around things I care about. The difference isn't not gripping. The difference is noticing the grip sooner and unclenching more quickly, before it's been running for 3 days and I can't figure out why everything feels heavy. That's the real practice. Not achieving some enlightened baseline of detachment, just shortening the gap between clenched and open, over and over, until the open hand starts to feel more natural than the fist ever did. So here's what this actually looks like, day to day. Several times a day, and especially in the two softest moments, just after you wake up and just before you sleep, when your analytical mind is a little quieter, pause and ask yourself one question. Just that. Not a full meditation, not a journaling session, just a moment of honest noticing. If the answer is gripping, and it will be, often, because that's what we were trained into, you don't try to force calm. Forcing calm is another form of gripping. You just unclench, physically. Let your actual hand go slack. Let your shoulders drop half an inch. Release your jaw if it's set. These aren't metaphors, do them literally. The body trusts small, repeated signals far more than it trusts one large, dramatic decision. 100 small unclenchings throughout a week will shift your nervous system's baseline more reliably than a single big moment of, I'm letting go and trusting the universe. Because the body knows what it's been practicing in the quiet minutes, not what you declared in the good one. Behrend did this twice a day for 6 weeks. Not because 6 weeks is a magic number, because that's how long it took for the open hand to become her natural posture around the thing she wanted. And once it did, the outcome started finding its way toward her through channels she hadn't predicted and couldn't have engineered with a clenched fist plan. That's what the invisible method actually is. Not a technique layered on top of your existing relationship to what you want, a change in the relationship itself. From stranglehold to open palm. Not instant, not guaranteed, but real and more available to you than most of what gets sold in this space. I keep coming back to that fist, the one that's working so hard, the one whose knuckles are pale from effort, the one that genuinely believes the tightness is what's keeping everything together, that if it relaxes for even a moment, something important will be lost. Everything you want most is waiting for a different kind of holding, not tighter, not louder, not more urgent, just open. That's all it was ever asking for.